Hey everyone, welcome back. Thanks for joining us. Today we've got a brand new story to share with you. So let's begin. The city I once knew had become a graveyard. My name is Mateo, and I used to believe that Isla and I had a decent life together. It wasn't perfect, no life ever is, but we had each other, and for me that was enough. I made my living as a long-haul trucker. My days were spent on the road, with hands that were rough and a back that constantly ached. But the money was steady. Isla worked at a high-end salon, doing makeup for women who probably never had to worry about a broken nail or making rent. We weren't wealthy, but we had a place to live, food to eat, and a person to come home to. I thought that meant something. Sometimes, Isla would take on private clients, visiting sprawling estates where she would prepare rich socialites for their galas and charity balls. These were places of immense houses, cool marble floors, and extravagant chandeliers. She would return late on those nights, carrying more money but always in a foul mood. The scent of someone else's perfume clung to her. She'd throw her purse on the floor, kick off her shoes, and stare at the walls as if they had personally offended her. "Do you know the kind of bathroom that woman had?" she'd say, her voice tight with resentment. "Our entire apartment could fit in there. And her closet? Designer shoes lined up like a boutique." I would stay silent, knowing from experience that was the best approach. She would inevitably turn her anger on me. "I should have married someone with ambition," she'd snap. "Not a man who's happy hauling junk and coming home with grease under his nails." I'd sit at the kitchen table, rubbing my temples, trying to keep my voice even. "Isla, please, let's not do this again. I'm serious, Mateo. I see how those women live, and then I come back to this tiny place, and it makes me furious. We're poor, Mateo. Have you ever thought about that? We're poor." I'd look at her, searching for the woman I married beneath the bitterness. "We have what we need," I'd say softly. "We're doing okay." "Okay?" She would laugh, a sharp, empty sound. "You think this is okay?" "Sometimes I think I settled, Mateo. I should have waited for a man who could give me more." I knew where the anger came from, so I never pushed back. I'd let her vent. When she finally calmed down, I'd bring her a glass of water or rub her shoulders. She would eventually sigh, wipe her eyes, and whisper, "I'm sorry. I get so jealous of my clients. I wish I had that life, but I know I never can." The breaking point was a Tuesday. I had just returned from a long trip, 5 days, 3 states, and little sleep. My boots were still dusty, my jeans gritty, and my back felt like a broken hinge. I came home hoping for a quiet evening and a hot meal. Instead, Isla was pacing, her arms crossed tightly, her face a mask of simmering rage. "You won't believe what I saw today," she said, her voice sharp. "One of my clients just bought a diamond bracelet worth more than every single thing we own combined. And you're still driving that old truck, like that's all you're capable of." I just stood there, her words hitting me like a physical blow. But this time, something was different. The years of biting my tongue and sacrificing my pride for peace finally took their toll. A line had been crossed. "Are you finished?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper. "What?" she said. I asked, "Are you done?" My voice hardened, and she stopped pacing. "Isla, I'm done. If you're so miserable here, if you truly hate your life this much, then maybe we should stop pretending." Her eyes widened. "What are you talking about?" "I'm saying," I said, stepping closer, "that if you want to find a man who can give you the life you crave, then go find him. We'll get a divorce. I won't stand in your way. I won't even be mad." She stared at me, her mouth slightly agape. You don't mean that." "I do," I said. "I have put up with your tantrums and your self-pity for years. I have sat here and listened to you call me poor and useless, and I've let it slide because I thought you were just venting. But this isn't venting anymore. This is you dragging me through the mud because you don't know what you want. I am happy with my life, Isla. I know who I am. I can't magically become a millionaire. I don't have the education or the charisma of those rich men you idolize. I live in the real world." She just stood there, stunned into silence. "So here it is," I finished. "This is the last time I'm saying this. Either come back to reality, or pack your things and go find your perfect world." After that night, Isla didn't complain about money or rich men. At first, I thought I had gotten through to her, but her silence was louder than any of her rants. Something between us had become colder. She wasn't fighting anymore, but she wasn't present either. Her phone was her constant companion. She would sit on the couch, the screen illuminating her face, a faint smile gracing her lips, a smile not meant for me. At dinner, she'd barely touch her food, just a quiet nod and a thanks before retreating to the bedroom. Phone in hand, the door clicking shut. I stopped asking who she was texting. I knew I wouldn't get an honest answer, so I started preparing for the end. I met with a lawyer, a Tuesday after a long drive. In his office, surrounded by the smell of stale coffee, I laid out my case. I wanted a clean break. He explained the process, the joint assets, the alimony. It was a messy reality, but at least it was clear. I also started seeing a therapist from my trucking company's health plan. In a small beige room, a quiet man with glasses asked me about my stress levels. I told him I wasn't sad, just tired. I was tired of being resented for being myself. She's making plans? I told him one session. I don't know what kind, but I can feel it. He scribbled something on his notepad. What kind of plans do you think? I leaned back, staring at the ceiling. Not the kind where we just split and shake hands. There's a strange focus in her eyes now. She's calmer, but it feels calculated, controlled. She's still getting up, going to work, and putting on her makeup like nothing has changed. But it has. Her plans, they're not peaceful. It was a Sunday afternoon. I was in the kitchen, searching for a matchbox to light the stove. As I rummaged through a junk drawer, my hand brushed against something strange. A small plastic packet. I pulled it out and stared. White powder, fine and sealed. My mind refused to process it at first, but a sickening coldness spread through my stomach. I didn't need a lab to tell me what it was. My gut knew it was cocaine. My hand tightened around the packet as everything clicked into place. The phone, the sudden distance. I carefully placed the packet back and walked straight to the bedroom. Isla wasn't home, likely on a private appointment. I opened her closet and found a few things tucked away. New designer clothes with tags still on, expensive lingerie. None of it looked like anything she had worn in our life together. And then, 3 more of those little packets. I stood there, breathing through my nose, fighting the urge to punch the wall. I grew up in the city. I knew what that powder meant. My older brother, Luis, was in that world once. He had taught me the dangers. You enter this road, Mateo, he told me, and it ends in one of 3 ways. Jail, a bullet, or a knife. There's no turning back. I had listened. I became a trucker and stayed on the straight path. But now it had found its way into my home. I put everything back exactly as I found it. Then I called Luis. I found something, I said, my voice low, in the kitchen drawer, then more in her closet. This white powder sealed tight. And she has all this new, expensive stuff. There was a long silence on the other end. You sure? He finally asked. I've seen it before. I'm not guessing. He sighed. All right, don't touch it again. Don't ask her about it. Let me check a few things. Give me a day. You think she's dealing? I don't know. But if she is, she's not alone. Someone's supplying her. And if she's in that deep, she's in danger. What should I do? Nothing, he said firmly. Go to work. Act normal. Let me find out what's going on. When Luis called and said, meet me at Mom's place, I knew the news would be bad. He only talked like that when things were serious. I drove straight to the old neighborhood. My mom, Elena, was in the kitchen. She gave me a quiet nod, then disappeared down the hall. She always gave us space for these kinds of talks. Luis was already sitting at the kitchen table. He was a man of few words, and his face was grim. I found out, he said. I've been asking around. Isla's been seen with someone. A guy named Arturo Vargas. Who is he? On the surface, he's a polished businessman. But he's a psychopath, Mateo. He's not slick, he's reckless and violent. He thinks he's untouchable. People say he's shot a man just for looking at him the wrong way. My stomach clenched. He's not just dealing, Luis continued. He's dangerous, arrogant as hell. And Isla, she's not just some fling. She's involved. She's helping, moving packages, maybe just starting, maybe already in deep. Don't confront her. File for divorce. Walk away clean. Let her deal with the hell she's created. I went home that evening with a head full of fire but a face that showed nothing. I didn't say a word to Isla. I just hung up my keys and sat on the couch like it was any other night. She was at the dining table, scrolling on her phone. Did you move something in my closet? She asked without looking up. What stuff? I replied, my heart pounding. Never mind, she said, dropping the subject. I should have known then, but I was too focused on my escape plan. I figured if I just kept my head down, I'd be out of that house in a few weeks. That night, I went to bed early. I didn't even lock the door. That was my mistake. I woke up to a flash of searing pain. A hard crack against my skull. Another blow landed, this time on my shoulder. I groaned and rolled, but it was too late. I was on the floor, my ribs screaming. More blows came, kicks to my side and leg. I tasted blood. I was gasping, trying to see through the blur. Then a weight on my chest. It was Isla. Her face was inches from mine, cold and wild-eyed. Listen to me, she hissed, her voice terrifyingly calm. Never touch my things again. Ever. She got up and walked out. In the doorway, I saw a shadowy figure. A man, just standing there, watching. Then, everything went black. The next morning, I woke on the floor. My mouth was filled with the taste of metal. Every breath felt like sucking air through broken glass. My face was swollen, my lips split, and my ribs screamed with every movement. I crawled to the bathroom, one hand on the wall. When I finally used the toilet, I saw blood, dark and thick. That's when I knew it was worse than I thought. I dragged myself back to the bedroom, grabbed my phone, and called Luis. They jumped me, I croaked. Last night, I think it was her and someone else. I was asleep. They ambushed me. He didn't ask questions. I'm on my way. 15 minutes later, Luis was at the door. Isla must have heard his car, because she was there to meet him. You can't just barge in here, she shrieked. The sound of a slap echoed through the apartment. Isla stumbled back, holding her cheek. You'll pay for this? Luis growled, pushing past her. He found me slumped against the wall. He knelt, his arms slipping under mine. Come on, Mateo. Let's get you out of here. I just nodded, unable to say much. Every step was agony. Luis helped me into his car. As he drove away, Isla was on the porch, yelling curses. He looked back at her once, his face cold. You'll pay for this? He repeated, then slammed the door. He drove fast, but with purpose, taking back streets until we pulled into the emergency room at Jackson Memorial Hospital. Nurses rushed out when they saw me. Blood crusted on my face, bruises spreading across my chest. They took me in for x-rays and CT scans. A broken rib, a concussion, a hairline fracture in my cheekbone, and minimal internal bleeding. Luis posted 2 of his guys outside my room, quiet men with scarred knuckles. I slept most of the first day. 3 days later, Luis came back with fresh clothes. Let's go. You're staying at my place. I didn't argue. As we drove, I saw them, 2 cars trailing us. A black sedan and a silver hatchback. Tinted windows, slow turns. You see them? I asked. I see them, Luis muttered. Once we were inside his gated home, he called for our mother. Elena came from the back room, her hands full of laundry. Luis told her everything about the cars, the hospital, Isla. She didn't flinch. She walked to the other side of the room, picked up her phone, and dialed a number from memory. She spoke in short, quiet Spanish, then hung up. Who was that? Luis asked. Elena just looked at him and went back to folding shirts. That night was a nightmare. I was still sore, my ribs tightly wrapped. I went to the guest bathroom to brush my teeth. I was in there, standing at the sink, when the world exploded. The first sound was shattering glass, followed by relentless gunfire. The walls shook. I dropped to the floor, scrambling on all fours, my heart pounding. These weren't street guns. These were weapons of war. Bullets tore through the walls like paper. Then came the grenades. The first one hit the front wall, the air whooshing out of the room. Dust and fire poured in. 2 more grenades ripped through the house. Everything shook. The ceiling groaned. Fire spread quickly. Then, a sudden, terrifying silence. I stayed in the bathtub, breathing dust and smoke, my ears ringing. I heard sirens, lots of them. Red and blue lights flickered through the cracks in the wall. I tried to call out, but my throat was full of soot. I managed to bang on the side of the tub. Rough hands pulled me from the wreckage. Someone wrapped a blanket around me and held an oxygen mask to my face. I looked back at what was left of the house, a charred skeleton. My brother, Luis? I asked, my voice hoarse. Paramedic looked at another, saying nothing. I later learned he was hit 3 times, bleeding out before anyone could reach him. My mother, Elena, was found slumped behind the couch, too still. They tried CPR, but her face was pale, and her lips were blue. After 5 minutes, they stopped. She was gone too. The safe house was cold, quiet, and smelled of dust. Luis's men didn't say much. They just nodded when I thanked them. 2 days later, after the police released the bodies, the funeral was held at a simple funeral home. There weren't many people there. Just a few of Luis's friends, some of my mother's old neighbors, and some faces I didn't recognize. I stood at the graves, 2 mounds of fresh dirt, 2 names carved in polished stone. I cursed myself. If I had left sooner, if I had listened, I was alone, or so I thought. A hand rested on my shoulder, firm and steady. I turned to see a man with gray hair and deep lines on his face. His eyes were sharp, familiar. Now is not the time for sorrow, but for preparation, he said in a low, steady voice. Who are you? I asked. My name is Diego Hernandez. Elena was my sister. That makes me your uncle, and the only family we both have left. I said nothing, my throat tight. Come, he said, motioning for me to walk with him. He walked with his hands behind his back. When my father died, Elena left for Miami. She needed a new beginning. I stayed behind. But when your father passed, I helped her get on her feet here. I wired her money and called in a few favors. Why didn't you come sooner? I asked. She called me last night. I came as fast as I could. I was too late. He stopped walking and looked at me. What do you want, Matteo? I opened my mouth, then closed it. If you stay in this city, you'll be haunted, he continued. These people don't forgive. But if you leave, you'll be a coward. A man who ran from his family's killers. I stood there, the Miami sun beating down on me. I heard Luis's voice in my head, walk away, and my mother's voice from when I was a child. Never trade your soul for vengeance. It leaves you empty. But those words felt like a distant whisper. I just looked at Diego and he smiled. It wasn't a warm smile. He put a hand on my shoulder. In Colombia, I am surrounded by people who are waiting for me to die. They smile at me, eat at my table, and drink my wine. But in their hearts, they count the days. I see it in their eyes. But you have a fire. You have my blood. It's time to avenge my sister and my nephew. I wanted to kill someone that night. Anyone. My hands wouldn't stop shaking. Luis and my mom were gone, buried in the ground. But I couldn't cry. Crying was a luxury I couldn't afford. Diego's voice echoed in my mind. If you leave, you're a coward. If you stay, you better be ready. He was right. Revenge wasn't about rage. Rage was loud and foolish. I had to be quiet, cold, and feel nothing. I stood in front of the mirror that night, looking at my own eyes. I whispered to myself, you don't get to break. Not until this is over. I started to count my breaths. Each one was a second less they had to live. I buried my pain under concrete. They thought they had left a man for dead, but they had just awakened a ghost. And now the ghost was waiting. Diego said patience was power, but it didn't mean sitting still. It meant moving in silence. Luis had trusted men, 2 of them ex-military. They owed him. Within 48 hours, we had a name. Not Arturo, I knew he was behind it, but one of the men who pulled the trigger, Milo Ramirez, a low-level enforcer with a big mouth. We found him behind a pool hall in Little Havana, bragging about the attack. I didn't say a word. I walked up and broke his knee with a baseball bat. He screamed, but I shoved his face into the hood of his car and pressed the barrel of a pistol into the back of his skull. Who gave the order? I hissed. Say the name, or I start taking pieces. He cried, but I didn't move. It was Vargas, he coughed. Arturo Vargas. But he's not the only one. He's got people. Some cartel freak from Medellin named Don Checho. Where's the next drop? I growled. I don't know. I swear. Ask Rico, he handles logistics. He plays cards at the VFW bar off 8th Street on Tuesdays. That's all I know. I leaned in. You show your face again, and I'll make sure no one can recognize it. I left him screaming. A minute later, I returned and finished the job. It was messy but satisfying. That night, Diego poured us drinks. You did good, he said. But this was the easy part. I nodded, wiping blood off my hands. I had names and a location. The circle was tightening. They had killed my family. Now I was going to map every inch of their world and burn it to the ground. We didn't talk much over the next 2 days. I stayed off the radar, using every contact Luis ever trusted. We moved safe houses twice, switched phones, and changed our appearances. By Tuesday morning, I had a pistol I trusted and a bulletproof vest I wore like a second skin. Rico's poker night was a go. The bar was nothing fancy, just a low ceiling and 2 exits. The drop was scheduled for 10 p.m. They would be relaxed, arrogant. They had no idea I was coming. I arrived early and parked 3 blocks away. I moved through the alley, gloves on, my mind clear. I was inside the kitchen at 9:50 p.m. At 9:58 p.m., I kicked in the backroom door. 5 men sat at a table with 2 duffel bags. I fired the first shot before anyone could react. Rico went down next. I put 2 bullets in his chest and 1 in his mouth. 10:01 p.m. it was done. The room smelled of blood and gunpowder. I grabbed the duffels, cocaine in one, cash in the other. I poured cheap whiskey across the floor, lit a curtain, and walked out before the fire spread. By the time the sirens echoed, I was in a different car, headed east. I wasn't just hunted anymore. They were the ones watching their backs. I was just getting started. You don't kill a monster like Arturo Vargas with a single blow. You cut him apart, piece by piece, making him bleed until he's half the man he used to be. I started with his confidence. His network was spread across the state, but his power was built on fear. Fear can rot from the inside if you just twist it enough. My first move was small. A money van headed for Tampa never arrived. We burned the cash and left a recording of Arturo's voice playing on a loop. It was just enough to make him wonder who got that close. The second move. His warehouse in Little River was emptied without a single sign of forced entry. He started asking questions. By the 3rd hit, he couldn't sleep. He put 2 of his own men in the ground for not answering fast enough. The whispers began. Arturo Vargas was losing his mind. It was exactly what I wanted. I paid a visit to Javier, Arturo's second-in-command. I knew Javier had doubts. I also knew his sister lived in a quiet neighborhood. I didn't touch her. I just left a burner phone in her mailbox. When he answered, I knew I had him. "You've got the wrong guy," he said nervously. "No," I replied. "I've got the only one smart enough to get out before the fire reaches your feet." We talked twice more. I offered him a way out. Clean money, new papers, a future. He didn't say yes, but 2 weeks later, he slipped me a map of Arturo's next cargo route. No name, no demands. Just a single message. "End this." He was in. Then things got loud. A deal was hit by men wearing Arturo's own masks. 3 guards were killed. The sole survivor claimed he heard them say, "Arturo doesn't protect his own anymore." His allies, the small-time players who clung to his power, started pulling out. Whispers spread that Arturo was losing control. I made sure those whispers echoed. His men began to vanish. The ones who stayed were the ones too scared or too dumb to leave. Arturo stopped trusting anyone. I didn't just hurt him. I made him question his kingdom. And the best part? He still had no idea who was bleeding him dry. But soon he would. Power doesn't need love. It only needs leverage. I understood this the deeper I got into Arturo Vargas's empire. His so-called partners were parasites feeding off his protection. So I offered them a better deal. I called a meeting in a parking garage with men like Rafael, Tino, and a silent woman named Lorraine, who controlled the port. They showed up because they didn't trust Arturo anymore. That was all I needed. Rafael lit a cigar. "You want us to betray Vargas? That's suicide." "No," I said. "I want you to evolve. Vargas is the past. You've seen it. He's paranoid, erratic, bleeding money. I'm giving you a future." "A future under you?" Tino laughed. "Under yourselves. I don't need to stand on your necks. You keep your businesses, your turf, your independence. I'll provide the supply, higher quality, lower price. All I ask for is loyalty. Not to me, but to the table. No backstabbing. No side deals with Vargas. You cut him out, I cut you in." Lorraine was the first to speak. "How do we know you can deliver?" I tossed her a sealed packet. Schedules, container numbers, and intel on a recent heist. 3 ships arriving in 12 days. They opened the packet, their eyes scanning the contents greedily. Men like them only cared about risk and numbers, and I had both on my side. "So we just drop Vargas?" Tino asked. "You already have," I said. "You just haven't admitted it yet." One by one, they nodded. The effect was immediate. Arturo's distribution slowed to a crawl. His calls went unanswered. When he sent 2 men to intimidate a partner, they were found duct-taped to a light pole the next morning, beaten and humiliated. The message was clear. I didn't have to fire a single bullet. His allies became mine because I made more sense. I was cleaner, cheaper, smarter. I gave them something Arturo never could. A future where they didn't have to look over their shoulders. Loyalty bought with profit is only as strong as the next payday, and I kept the supply steady. By the end of the week, the power was mine. Some men fall because you outsmart them. Others fall because you corner them. Arturo was both. I didn't have to touch him to break him. I just had to make him bleed from the inside out and make the voices in his head louder than the ones around him. The trap wasn't a single moment. It was a series of whispers, missed calls, and ghosted allies. His men left quietly, trickling out with product or simply disappearing. I ensured the silence felt strategic. I planted subtle seeds of doubt. I had my people leak a doctored voice memo, Isla's voice, talking to someone who sounded like me. Nothing explosive, just enough to spark doubt. "He's slipping," the voice said. "It's all going to fall apart soon." When Arturo heard it, he turned to Isla and said, "Tell me who you've been talking to." She froze. "I don't know what you're talking about." "I hear your voice," he said coldly. "I know how you breathe when you lie." He stormed off, leaving her confused. I didn't need her to betray him. I just needed him to believe she might. I planted another seed. A wiretap leak of Isla's voice talking to Lorraine. I don't know how much longer I can do this." Nothing specific, but to a man spiraling and abandoned, it was nuclear. He started watching her, paranoid and accusatory. He rifled through her bag, found nothing, and that made it worse. The next leak, a quiet message to an ally, had Isla's voice saying, "If I leave, I won't warn him. I'll just go." When Arturo heard it, he didn't explode. He just sat down on the edge of the bed. When Isla walked in, he stared at her. "How long have you been planning it?" he asked softly. She froze. "Planning what?" "You tell me, Isla. I think you've been thinking about it a long time." "Arturo," she said, her eyes filling with tears. "I've only ever tried to help you." He laughed. A cold, sharp sound. "I think you've done enough." He didn't trust her anymore, and that was the beginning of the end. The first time he hit her, it was a backhand that sent her sprawling into a glass coffee table. "You lying bitch," he roared. You think I'm stupid? Why does everyone keep leaving? His men saw the aftermath, but no one spoke. Isla's laughter disappeared. She stopped wearing makeup and heels. Her face was bruised and she wore long sleeves. Though no one said it aloud, they all knew Arturo Vargas had crossed a line, and the house no longer felt like a kingdom. It felt like a coffin. I would be lying if I said I didn't enjoy it. I needed him to break, and I needed him to do it publicly. My next target was Rafe, one of Arturo's last remaining captains. I found him at a corner bar and slid into his booth. She made a deal, I said quietly. Isla with me. Rafe's jaw clenched. You serious? If Arturo hears this, he'll snap. That's the idea. I smiled. 2 days later, the rumor Rafe had spread began to seep through Arturo's inner circle. He didn't say it outright. He just dropped it casually over drinks. Ever notice how Isla always leaves the room when business gets real? He leaned in. He's got to get his house in order before someone burns it down from the inside. It was all smoke, no proof. But it didn't matter. Arturo, coked up and unraveling, didn't need evidence. He just needed a reason. 2 nights later, he threw a party, loud, chaotic, and full of a desperate energy. Around midnight, his eyes fixed on Isla. You've been talking to Mateo? He asked loudly. She blinked, stunned. What? Don't play dumb, he snarled. You've been feeding him? Is that why everything's fallen apart? He grabbed her hair and dragged her across the floor. When one of his men tried to intervene, Arturo hit him with a pistol. Bitch betrayed me, he roared. He beat her with his fists, then the butt of the gun. When he finally stopped, she wasn't moving. No one called for help. Hours later, 2 maids found her in the pool house. Her neck twisted at an unnatural angle, blood on the white tiles. By sunrise, the word had spread. He killed her, someone muttered. Over a rumor. Rafe called a contact. He's lost his mind. We're done here. No one waited for orders. They fled. His captains switched allegiance overnight. Even his suppliers cut him off. Arturo's name, once a warning, now turned stomachs. The empire fell in silence. The trap had closed. 3 nights later, the ocean was still. I was on the Evangeline, Arturo's private yacht. He stood at the stern, drinking scotch, his eyes glassy. His last allies, Marco, Tino, and Rafe, stood nearby, pretending everything was fine. They're just scared, Arturo muttered. They see me bleeding, so they think I'm weak. You're right, boss, Marco said. That's why we're here. Behind him, Tino pulled out a shotgun. Arturo turned, confused. What the hell is this? It's over, man, Rafe said. You work for me. Not anymore. You ungrateful little bitches. Arturo snarled, reaching for his gun. But it was gone. Rafe held it up with a smirk. You dropped it back on the dock. You were too busy crying about Isla to notice. Arturo looked around, finally realizing no one would follow his orders. A second speedboat docked quietly. I stepped onto the deck without a word. Arturo saw me and laughed. A ragged, hollow sound. So this is it? You gonna give a speech? Tell me I deserve this. I just watched him. His sunken eyes, the twitch in his jaw. You think this makes you a better man? He spat. You're just like me, Mateo. You just wear better shoes. Maybe, I said. But I don't hit women, and I don't burn my kingdom down because I can't control my nose. He lunged, a desperate, clumsy move. I pulled out my pistol and leveled it at his chest. Any last words? Screw you, he wheezed. I smiled. Original. The shot echoed once. He dropped. We wrapped him in a tarp, weighed him down with an anchor, and dropped him into the dark water. The sea swallowed him whole. Somewhere between the stars and the tide, I became what I swore I wouldn't. A king built on bones. The next morning, Miami was silent. Arturo's body had vanished, his empire gutted from within. I stood at a private airstrip, a cigarette dangling from my fingers. My Uncle Diego leaned against a black SUV, always calm. He had been the quiet shadow behind everything, the one who taught me where loyalty ends and strategy begins. Still time to turn back, he said. We cleaned up here. You could run Miami for the next decade. I flicked ash from my cigarette, watching the private jet warm up. No point ruling ashes. Miami's too small now. He looked at me over his sunglasses. I'm giving you an option, son. Learn how to run this city and then come back with me. Cali isn't a playground. It's a nest of wolves. I don't need them to care, I said. I need them to listen. He nodded once. He always knew I was never going to stay in the kiddie pool. We flew out that night. Cali hit me with a different kind of heat. Not just the weather, but the pressure. This place wasn't flashy like other cities. It pulsed with something raw, older. We drove through the outskirts in an armored SUV, silent men with rifles on motorcycles flanking us. I saw the compounds, the high walls, the eyes watching from rooftops. This city didn't run on money. It ran on fear. The hacienda was nestled in the hills, the kind of place where men disappear if they speak out of turn. Inside, the air was thick with cigar smoke and suspicion. 4 of them sat around a dark wood table, old cartel heads. They didn't speak. They didn't offer me a seat, so I pulled out a chair and sat down. "Gentlemen," I said, meeting each of their eyes, "let's not pretend I came here to kiss anyone's ring. I'm here to take over your city." For a second, no one moved. Then the oldest one let out a low chuckle. "You've got guts, kid," he said. I leaned forward, smiling. "I've got more than that." That's when I knew this wasn't the end of my story. It was just the start. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more stories like this. See you next time.